happy Friday, happy June. We got a lot of great stuff going on, lots of rapid growth. We've got new deals coming into the pipeline every week now. Couple updates from Surge's side. Again, Davis just put a deal in. Mike Lazer's got, I think, 4 deals in progress, which is amazing. We've got him as a guest today, so we'll be diving into his background and expertise. And we have another deal closing on Monday, actually in my hometown, where I'm currently living in Iowa, which is very exciting. REAP grant candidate. It's a 150K deal, so it's relatively small, but it comes down to about a 6K decision with all of the incentives and the REAP grant that they're going to be getting. So super excited about that. We're just closing that on Monday. They're super excited to get that solar installed. So we're stoked about that. And today I'm very excited because we're going to be talking with Mike Lazer, who I know I've shouted out a number of times on these calls because he's just incredible. He joined Surge, and within about 2 weeks, he put like 7 or 8 deals into the platform, just like boom, 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 boom. He was really hitting it hard. And we took notice of that. And I think a lot of people did, wanting to know what is his secret sauce, right? What is his methodology? What's his strategy? And I think what we're going to find out today is it's actually a lot simpler than we are all thinking it is.
Prepare to be disappointed if you have grand scheme plans. Prepare to keep it simple.
Right. I saw that coming. And I'm super excited to open this up. So Mike, thank you so much for being here today and being willing to share your knowledge and what you do, because I know everybody who has seen you on these calls is like, hey, Mike, I got to get in touch with you, right? So at some point you might want to start charging for coaching maybe, but tell us a little bit about how you got started in solar in the first place. Like what inspired you to get into the renewable energy industry?
When I was 17 years old, a long time ago, I joined the Navy to be a nuclear energy operator. And I actually did really well at that. I went through a lot of school. I learned a lot about electricity, learned a lot about power production. And then I got out of the Navy, and Tennessee Valley Authority laid off 1,500 nuclear workers, and it forced me out of that industry if I was going to be smart. I didn't want to stay in nuclear energy anyway. You have to know a lot. You have to really immerse yourself in power production. I was on USS George Washington. I knew every switch, pipe, motor controller, control panel, the guts, everything. I had to be able to explain to the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier how a single water molecule could find its way into our nuclear reactor coolant system, which means you have to know every piping diagram, every single thing about it. I was really good at it. A lot of attention to detail. And then at the end of the day, you're just sitting in front of a control panel with hours of boredom and seconds of excitement. But at the end of the day, it's still about keeping it simple. I got out of the Navy and I did technical work for big customers like Intel, Motorola, Tokyo Electron. I got dissatisfied with that type of work, and then I got into the mortgage business for over a decade. And then I moved along from that. I wanted to help people in a different way, and I did residential solar for a couple of years. And in doing residential solar, everybody always talks about, yeah, I do commercial also. And the company that I was with did commercial also. So I wanted to learn that business, and I'd go out and get my own customers. I'd go out, I'd scout where I wanted to go. I'd get 12 electric bills. I'd turn them in. And then not everybody that says they do commercial really does commercial, because what would happen is this stuff would get loaded in an Aurora software system. They weren't using Energy Toolbase. They were just doing offset-based calculations for power size, which is completely inappropriate in my utility. I've got to get interval data and all that. So I moved on from that, and then I started submitting some stuff through a pretty big channel partner, 300 kilowatt and above, based out of, I don't care, Al, you already know who I was sending stuff to. It was NVIDIA, a pretty big outfit for large scale commercial stuff, but I'm training them all over again on how to do business in Arizona. I'd kind of facepalm sometimes when the proposal would come back, and I'm like, guys, we got to scale this down. My utility is the worst utility in the United States of America, I think, to work in. We don't have net metering. and the buyback is 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So in order to make a deal fit here, I've got to be smart. I've got to have the EPC be offset. But we don't calculate it that way. We calculate it based off of 15-minute interval data and 30-minute demand data for the whole year. And if somebody's kind of a noob on here and they want to know what that is, I'll keep it simple and I'll explain how we get to that. But I'm not even sure how I answered your question. What got me into doing solar was it felt like a good fit. I had years of working with mortgage customers, wanting to turn their rental situation into home ownership situation. And I just translated that into home energy, where I wanted people to experience home energy ownership instead of renting from their utility company. I wanted to set my sights a little bit bigger and do commercial. And I kind of gave you my story there on how I forced my way in.
Nice. Yeah, no, really great story, and so much breadth of experience in your background. It's really nice to see how many different things you've done, and you know, the knowledge that you've gained from each of those probably serves you in everything that you do today. So
A little bit.
that's amazing. Yeah, really, really cool. So I'm curious, you know, you said you've done resi for several years. A couple questions there. Like, are you still doing residential, or are you fully commercial?
Yeah, I do residential by referral. And I have a pretty good network of realtors and Chamber of Commerce people that send me business. So I do residential. I keep it simple with residential too. Out here with the net metering and all that stuff that my utility does, it's a pretty simple equation now that Tesla Powerwall 3's got a good option for us that's affordable. So residential is easy. I get to run the whole show, and I don't behave that way when I'm doing commercial. What I do with commercial is I walk into it. Do you want to talk about the process that I do, or
Yeah, no,
maybe I'd like to hear from somebody that also walks into commercial. I mean, can someone tell me what your approach is as soon as you walk in?
Yeah, that would be really great. Somebody like James Van Dang, somebody who's got, you know, a deal in the works. In fact, Van Dang, if you don't mind picking up, I don't want to call you out here, but you just put a great deal in the system. Do you mind sharing kind of how that came about?
Yeah, it's about fulfilling the need. So they told us what the problem was, and what Mike was saying, we hit on the pain points. So the more we hit on the pain points, the more they start complaining, and they start opening up, and they start giving more information than they actually give us more information than what we need. So pretty much we're qualifying them while they go over the problem. And then from there, it's a simple ask. You just ask for a utility bill. That's all we did. That's pretty much what we did. And then
so when you walk in there, is it cold or is that referral?
The first one was cold. The second one was referral. So we have a referral right now for 2 commercial buildings in where's this at? In New Jersey. But we haven't put that in surge yet. Yeah, I know you're looking for it.
New Jersey's like shooting fish in a barrel. That's not even fair.
Yeah. So we're waiting for. He's got 2 warehouses. So we got 12 months for one warehouse, but we're waiting for the other warehouse. But for the other one, it was straight cold. She was really mean mugging us when we came in there. But it took. We started asking more questions, and then just started building the pain points. And then eventually, she's like, "So how's this work exactly?" And we told her, and she's like, "So what do you need from me?" We're like, do you by chance have 12 months of utility bill? She was a property manager, so she handled paying all the bills. So it was like literally she accessed the folder and she clicked a couple times and you sent us the link, and then that was it.
So I'm going to just say real quick that you got lucky because you were talking to the right person.
all the way.
Okay. So let me back up a little bit. First let me tell you a little bit what formed me. If you haven't read this, take a screenshot.
Okay.
Does anybody know this book? I read this book every January. You should read it every January. I don't read a bunch of sales books. I only read these 2. I read this book every July, and don't judge a book by its cover.
Complete Idiot's Guide to Cold Calling. Love it.
It's legit, though. It is Ken Rosen, and it's endorsed by Brian Tracy. And I'll read that every summer vacation because cold calling is fun and easy if you're not treating it like it's cold calling. I usually walk into a place knowing who I need to talk to. I know all about their church, business, or charter school. I know who I want to talk to, but it's not always the person that can get me the bills. But also, when I walk into a place, I'm not selling squat. I'm asking a really quick qualifying question. Let's say it's a church. I walk in, they're super friendly, and I say, "Hey, who can I talk to that is a good steward about your APS bills or your SRP bills?" "Oh, that's Marge." I said, "I didn't make an appointment with Marge, but can I talk to her for about 90 seconds? I want to show her something." Almost 100% of the time, I get right through to Marge, right? I'll explain, very simple. I don't try to sell them anything. I say, "Hey, Marge, I'd like to talk to you about doing a feasibility study for the church on options to go solar. This isn't going to cost you anything. I just want to take a look at your usage and take a look at your electricity bills. I'll take it back to my partners and investors, see if it's feasible for you guys to move forward, probably in a way that doesn't cost any capital investment from the church. What I'm looking to do is just see if I can lower your electricity bills, and you're already buying kilowatt hours from your electric company. I'm going to change the way you buy those kilowatt hours and maybe make it cheaper. Can we talk about do you have login authority on your electric bills?" "Yeah." "Let me show you how to download 12 of those." Then I walk out with 12 bills. I don't want to act like this is an invincible script. You guys are going to have to make it your own, but you want to find I know who the decision makers are, but I want to find who has those bills. I want to find who's paying those bills first and offer the feasibility study, because when I go back in a week, it's my job to make it's my job to make Marge look good for cooperating with me. It's a little bit more complicated than that in my utility, because I'm going to get 12 electric bills, but I'm also going to go back a couple of days later and I'm going to reinforce skin on skin, eyeballs on eyeballs. I'm going to go back and I'm going to have a one-page form already filled out with their meter information. And I'm going to say, "Hey, I'm working on your feasibility study. Can you sign this for me? This gets utility data from SRP." And what I'm asking them to sign is a one-page document for each meter where I can get their interval data for 15 minutes of energy usage and interval data for 30 minutes of demand usage. And that I have to do for my utility if I'm going to make a proposal make sense. I need to do better than just get 12 bills. I need to get the interval data. It's super easy, and it gives me a chance to come right back onto their turf as a friendly, helpful person that's not selling them anything, just working on a feasibility project for the church.
Love that. I love that approach. And it makes perfect sense. You're not selling anything. And usually if you go,
I haven't even talked about,
yeah, you don't even
I haven't talked about why this is good or anything. I'm just going to, "Hey, can we do a feasibility study?" Once they're engaged, once they want a feasibility study and they hand me 12 bills, now it's a pipeline.
Yeah,
Now they're in the pipeline. Now I just bring in more players.
exactly. And what that does is it makes you the sort of explorer. It's like you're here investigating, okay, can this work for these people? And it almost makes it look like, they don't even really know that you're in sales, that you actually are going to end up being able to sell them something. And I think a lot of times we think of ourselves as, sales pros, sales consultants, selling solar. And what Mike's doing is he's putting himself in the position as the friendly face, the helper, the person who is investigating this opportunity for the company or the organization he's talking to. He's essentially saying, let me look into this for you. I'm going to help you out. And it's a completely different approach. It's like, it looks to them like, hey, he's just doing his job, right? He's just doing his job of, getting more people in renewables, which is great. So
I've got slim pickings in Arizona. I've got 2 EPCs willing to work out here right now. But once I hear back from an EPC, I'll go back to the church or wherever, and I'm like, "Hey, I've done my job playing Shark Tank. I want to set up a meeting." And so I did this last week. I physically brought John McConnell to the location, and we did a presentation on site. Now, most of the time, I'll probably be doing this over Zoom, but I wanted to meet him and Travis and his team over there. So I start the meeting, and I've got the friendly rapport with the church, and because I do my homework on them, and I'm going to know them, and I've already had conversations with them, and I know the EPC. So I just take over the meeting for about the first 2 minutes. And then I introduce John as the smartest person in the room. Hey, I wanted to connect you with John. He's my MVP here. I've looked at this from their angle and several angles, and I wanted you guys to connect because he's really got a good program for you. And then I don't have to do a whole lot more talking. I just facilitated it. I kept it simple. Honestly, I don't know what kind of inverters they're using at that point or what kind of panels it is and all that stuff. And I don't need to know that for this job, right? I do that stuff for residential, but I'm going to let these guys handle it. They'll talk about the roof concerns. Out here in Arizona, we've got a lot of flat roof and there's a lot of really expensive detach and reset stuff that happens out here if you don't use a weight and ballast system. So everybody's just doing weight and ballast system. It's easy, and I'll let them talk about it. But I introduce my EPC, whether it's virtual or in person. Hey, I want to turn you over to my MVP. I don't call him the EPC. I call him my MVP. I want you to listen to what John's got to say to you guys, and then we'll both be here to answer questions.
Love it. Brilliant. Really, really well done. And that is the beauty of this process, bringing in the EPC to do the education, to talk about the equipment being used, to talk about the timeline, letting them take the lead on that. And you, Mike, just really facilitating those introductions in that process and building that trust, building that relationship for them is absolutely, absolutely brilliant. And MVP versus EPC, you can see in the chat, I'm just loving that. So yeah, really well done. I mean, my biggest question for you now that you've kind of taken us through the, step by step, the nitty gritty details of how you bring somebody through this process. Let's look at it from a more bird's eye view, right? A macro lens. I mean, you put in 7 or 8 deals in your first couple of weeks on Surge. How did you pull that off? Did you call these different organizations, these churches, schools, or did you walk into places? Did you research them first on the internet, or did you just, look up churches on Google Maps? How did you actually approach choosing your leads and then approach those leads directly?
You're frozen.
Okay, I think you cut out there. Can everybody else?
I think I got the gist of the question. Is my connection still okay?
Yeah, your video is a little bit off, but I think we can hear you just fine. Did you hear my question?
Yeah, how do I get in there and recon and all that?
Yeah,
That's not secret. And it gets even better. So I would tell you guys, spend $25 on Amazon and get that stuff. But I just go to Google Maps and I turn on satellite mode, and I see in Maps you can search charter schools, churches, whatever. I see who's big enough and got a good enough roof for me to deal with, and then I start to drill down, and then I make a personal visit.
Interesting. So you actually do the recon first on the internet, then you drill down, choose a handful of people to talk to, and then you go in boots on the ground.
I don't email anybody because I figure that it's just going to get lost in spam, and I don't cold call anyone on the phone right now because I figure I'm not first in line with their problems. I show up on site unannounced, a lot of times unannounced, and I'm only asking for 90 seconds just to introduce myself to the person that is paying those bills. If they start asking me questions, they're giving me permission to go over 90 seconds.
Nice. Okay. So what types of questions do you get in those 90 seconds that kind of lead you into a deeper conversation?
Yeah, I won't. How much does this cost? Is this gonna, we've looked at this before and we didn't have the money, that kind of stuff. And then I'll just answer some questions, always putting it back to the feasibility study. I said, I think what I'm hearing is that you guys need to find an option that doesn't cost you any money on buying the equipment, but just has a better option for buying kilowatt hours from a better source. Is my connection still okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, like, my biggest selling proposition right now, because Arizona energy is not super expensive yet. We're trying to be like California every chance we get. But right now, it's not the savings that looks glamorous. It's the utility rate increases versus the escalator. So the church that we met with last week, APS gave them a set, and I'm offering them, it's not a power purchase agreement in Arizona. It's called a solar service agreement. It's just words in our legislature. But I'm offering them a solar service agreement with a 2% escalator so that this can become the unique selling proposition. This can be what they're looking at. Yeah, how much money are we going to save? Well, when I show them a 3% increase in electricity costs, it doesn't, that's what John's going to propose in his proposals, 3% increases in the future versus a 2% escalator. I chime in with, that's great and super conservative, but it's not reality. I don't think our energy grid is in any kind of shape to support 3% increases in utility costs. I think that 17% that we got slammed with is probably going to be a regular occurrence over the next couple of years. Although I appreciate the fact that we're writing this up super conservative, it still shows you a value, but what it gives you is a certainty in locking it in with a 2% escalator.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
There's not a lot to say no to. I'm not asking for a lot of money. I'm not asking them to invest in capital. They don't have to have a fundraising campaign. All they have to do is, I explain to them that once we're long enough in this process, I say, here you are at a fork in the road. You have retail energy on the left that you've always had, but now there's an exit for discount energy on X amount of your power. Exactly. No purchase required. Yeah.
Yeah, really smart sell. And also, just to touch on that kind of approach or tactic of you making the introductions and facilitating that meeting, tag teaming with your EPC. If you're in the meeting with John and the client, that creates an energy, that creates a different vibe than if it's just a one-on-one sales meeting, right? Like if an EPC had a sales team and they're out there looking for leads, they're having those conversations, they're, working those deals directly, then it's a one-on-one situation. But when we bring a third person into the mix, the connector, you could say, the matchmaker in a sense, and that's what we're trying to create at Surge, is this sort of three-way interaction. It balances the energies differently because suddenly, it's like the concept of a table. You can't have a table on two legs. There's too much instability. But when you bring a third person into the mix, it creates a stability, and you guys are able to tag team on topics. You're able, John can bring up the escalator and you can say, actually, that's really conservative, right? It becomes a more robust conversation when there's three people in the room. And I really love your approach. And that's exactly what we're trying to create at Surge. I'm curious if you've noticed that, right? In times where you've just sold directly in a one-on-one situation versus when you've started selling in this sort of tag team, three-way conversation energy that you're creating.
Yeah, I kind of refined that when I was at Nvidium because they're not out here. I'm the guy that knows them by the time I turn it into Nvidium, and then they're going to take over the sales presentation. I just demanded to be turn it over to the MVP. I would ask a quick question. Is there a lot of people selling residential that's in this network?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people are coming in from Resi for sure.
Is anybody brave enough to put your business card up to the camera?
Let's see it. James, you got one? He's shaking his head.
Nobody has to do it because I'm going to do it. Let's see if we can do that.
Solar and battery, commercial and residential, Mike Laser, phone number, email, Laser Energy Solutions, LLC.
So in the back I can write on if they're not there. But the reason I wanted to show that is because I put the word commercial before I put residential. A lot of people say they do residential and commercial. So if you're walking into a place and you do residential and commercial, I just don't feel like they're going to take me seriously. But if I reword that, I put a lot of thought into the way the business card is written. If I say I do commercial and residential, I can hand that card to anybody and be taken seriously. I can hand that card to somebody that wants solar for their house, but more importantly, I can use that card at the front desk of an office building or a church or a charter school. This guy does commercial and residential. Do you see what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, totally different vibe. Please show card again. Can you hold your card up again?
Yeah, let's see if I can find the camera. Screenshot time.
Yeah, everybody grab a screenshot of this. Really good point. Builds credibility significantly.
Yeah, if you do it, put it on your card and put it first. Even if you do mostly residential stuff, don't say residential and commercial, say commercial and residential.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Really great point. So, is there anything that you would tell someone who is, moving from resi to commercial or maybe wanting to do both? Obviously, that was one nugget right there. But, what's your advice to somebody who recently joined Surge or is about to join Surge, maybe has a deal or two in the works? How can they maximize their deal count? Because, like I said, you put in like 8 deals in your first 2 weeks, which is amazing, right? That's a record in my book and certainly on the Surge platform. So what would you tell someone who wants to get to that level quickly?
I'd say you have to get good at the cold call. You're not going to get referred to 8 different commercial deals all at once. And when I was in mortgages, we used to say closings beget closings. And it's true. But if you're just starting, you can't rely on your other closings to refer you around. You're going to have to get good at cold calling. And honestly, I can't push that one book enough. I don't get any commissions from that guy, but that's a great book to basically think through how you're going to approach that customer and bring value first. And in this industry, we're not selling anything until we get bills. I look at my bills as a paycheck. Okay, I went in there to sell something and I got bills. That just gives me a job, right? Now I have a job. So if I can make my first approach just about getting bills and selling a feasibility study, now we're working.
Love it. Absolutely. Really great advice. I hope everyone's taking notes here. And actually, it looks like John just popped in the room. Welcome, John. You're the MVP we've been talking about for the last half hour. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, congrats to Mike and John. They've got a lot of great deals in the works. I would love to open this up to our community here today for questions, right? I'm sure you guys all have questions you'd like to ask Mike. I'm seeing some heads nod as I'm saying this. Drop them in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, come off mic and ask your questions, just go ahead.
Just want to reinforce a couple of things that Mike has said, and having been in the industry for 20 years. One of the first things he talked about was, do your recon. Do your homework before you go in there. Don't send an email. You know if it's a church, what the approach is. If you know it's a manufacturing facility, you know what the approach is. The other thing he talked about was really the fork in the road. Fork in the road is, are you happy with 17% increases that they just announced at APS or SRP in Arizona or wherever you are on this call? Or would you like to lock in 2.9? That is a boss move. It's not about savings. It's about control and predictability, right? How are we going to do it? I don't know. So the third point is, I don't know, but I got an MVP, John McDonnell and his team. They'll figure it out for you. You might need a few batteries. You might need a carport, EV charger. They're subsidized. Hey, by the way, there's a REAP grant if you're doing USDA. Let the guy do his job, right? Don't call him the EPC. Call him the MVP, right? And the last real small detail that was in there, if you weren't taking notes, you came on late, or you're listening to this podcast in mass, was what? Start with commercial, then residential, not the other way around. steak, right? Before the sizzle. You got to get the nutrition before your carbs, right, James Patteris? Is that how it works with CrossFit? Simple nuggets. And Mike is giving us for free. And by the way, Mike, we should probably put a clinic on together. We'll be like Tony Robbins in the solar industry. We could do that. Come on, man. Don't be shy. I'll bring the people. You bring your steak. Allie, great job today. So that's my 2 cents, just wrapping a bow around it. And Mike, you just killed it. I'd love to hear from John and the rest of the VIPs.
Yeah, I can jump in here. Yeah, Mike does a great job at going in and getting bills. Like he's probably the best I've ever seen. I've been doing this for 16 years. While you're in there, you're going to be talking to either front desk person or it might be a decision maker. Create a champion out of them, because if there's no champion, there's no deal. And that's usually what we say is the number one reason why commercial deals moves forward is, one, they're going to save money, right? They have to save money. There has not been a time, and we've installed hundreds and hundreds, probably near 1,000 commercial solar systems, that someone's moved forward that didn't save money. On a third-party finance, you can't even do that anyway. That's an unfundable deal. But creating the champion is number 2. So knowing who you're going after, researching them. We all get cold emails saying, hey, I got a quick question for you. I just delete. But when you go in there and say, I know who you are, I know a little bit about you, it's kind of like a job interview, right? You got to know the company you're interviewing with. You go in, you hook their attention. Mike has the insight to get the bills and do that feasibility study, but then you got to create the excitement about it too. That builds a champion.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, everybody I've ever helped in my renewable energy career has gotten promoted or gotten a raise, right? Because why? Because somebody like John or Mike said, hey, let's see if we can do something for you. There's no selling there. Let's make you a champion.
Yep.
John,
Yeah,
would you
it helps you get an ally when you're at the decision maker level.
Your champion, yeah. And John, would you put your information in the chat? There's going to be thousands of people listening to this podcast, and I'm sure some people might want to connect with you either on or off of Surge. Hopefully on with Surge, right, Allie? But I think that'd be cool if you could do that. Allie, back to you.
Hey,
Awesome.
Mike. Oh, excuse me. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. I was curious how you've been able to, were you able to leverage like the grant aspect of it, the agricultural one, and the EV, the other aspects of it, the EV charging. Has that been attractive to them?
I would probably direct you to John on that, because there's not a lot of opportunity zone out here.
Yeah, I know. It's a good question. I think a lot of people are leading with the REAP grant, and you just got to be careful on that. It's a great program. It pays 50% of the project cost if you're in a rural area and a small business, so 50,000 people in the city or town or less, and you're a small business under 500 employees. Or you could be an agricultural producer. So I think like X percentage, you have to be agriculture. So not everybody qualifies and not everybody gets the grant. We've applied for a couple recently that have got denied because it's just super competitive. So you can't build, and I've said this on Facebook, but you can't build a business model around REAP grants, but it is an excellent program. And if you do apply for it, it adds about 6 to 9 months on the sales cycle. So keep that in mind too. So commercial is already long. It's probably 9 to 15 months. And if you add a REAP grant into that, you're looking at a 2-year project. So going through and offering these, it's a great program for the right customer. But sometimes we see customers that are inside of the REAP eligibility area and they're a small business, but we don't propose it because it just slows down the process. And we have a pretty good in-house grant writing staff that gauges probability of getting the grant too. So that plays into effect.
That's interesting.
Hey, James, I don't talk about anything except a feasibility study until John's there.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you can talk your way out of a deal if you don't set the table properly for your MVP.
Mhm.
Feasibility study is really the key word, right, Mike? I don't know,
Yeah,
but
that's the only thing I'm selling is a feasibility study.
I got a guy. He's a smart guy.
Mm.
Been doing this for 17 years, or however long he's been doing it. Just give me your bills and I'll get back to you. I'll make sure you look good.
So later on, the other things can factor in, like the EV charging. That can be attractive to them later on in the process.
Sure. I can talk a little bit about that too. So
That's part of the recon, though, right? Sorry, John, but part of the
Okay.
recon, right, Mike? If you walk up to the facility, there's no EV chargers. Well, okay, we'll put that in the feasibility study request, right? Keep going, John.
No problem. You also got to be careful about EV chargers. Everybody wants them. It's a buzzword. It's wonderful to have, and they're very lucrative. So if you have a site that will charge for charging, it's insanely lucrative.
Mm.
However, it screws up the interconnection of solar. And I say that because not every time, but if you've got a main service panel, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's 200 amp or if it's 2000 amps, they're usually loaded up. So solar is going to be interconnected on a line side tap basis, most likely. And so we tap the bus and it's cool. But if you're adding fast chargers to a big project, then you're going into the interconnection application with solar, with so many amp backfeed and new consumption of fast charging. Those don't work together. So you just got to be careful. So you either go in one or the other, I think. And the feasibility study, like Mike Laser is saying, is it's set or closer. So if you're the main person, you're setting the appointment, but you don't want to sell on your set. You need to identify the champion and get them hooked without saying too much. I think a lot of what salespeople do is they vomit information. You could get the REAP grant, and that solar's free.
Mm.
That is not the way to approach commercial.
Good to know. Thank you.
Totally. Yeah, read it.
Mm. All right.
Totally true.
Awesome.
Nuggets. I'm excited to share this recording with the team. Great call.
Really, really great.
Just one thing that I would add in just working with John more closely is I'm providing a meter map now for all of my stuff that I want to submit. If I've got something with a facility that's got 3 meters, I'm just going to draw up a meter map so they know where they're coming in. Usually on my second visit, if I got bills, I'm getting out. If I got bills, I'm getting out. I'm starting the feasibility study, but it gives me an excuse to come back, meet the same people when I say, "Hey, can you sign this this interval data request?" And can I talk to the person that can show me the meters and the main entry box? I'd like to take some photos.
That's good.
That's
A pre-site assessment and walkthrough, knowing if I'm just taking this for granted, that's what you and John know how to set. You have to talk to your MVP because they're going to want you to set the table depending on who your MVP is. If John's like, do a pre-site assessment, get me pictures of the meter, get me pictures of the main panel or whatever, then you guys already know what that looks like, right? That's so key. Is don't try to set the table for somebody you don't know. Ask somebody like a John, okay, what do you expect from me? Don't talk about anything but the feasibility study. If you can, take a couple pictures. What kind of pictures? These pictures, right? Don't talk about EV chargers. Why? Just don't. I'll take care of that for you, right? Know the person you're setting the table to. This platform allows us to do that, right, Ali? And that's what's really super exciting about this. I haven't been in the industry for 20 years. Typically, again, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, you haven't joined Surge, you're like, I'm a resi guy. Maybe I want to learn commercial. Okay, well, that's hard. Right? Or you're a commercial guy, maybe I want to learn resi. Fine, whatever. Flip it, right? But the key is know how to set the table properly. And there is no shortcut to that. John is the MVP. We serve at his table. So if he wants the fork on the right side, the fork's going to be on the right side. If he wants the knife at the top, it's going to be at the top. Right? It's up to us to set it properly for the folks that are our MVPs. So 2 cents.
And you don't need to know everything. That's one of the things that if you go in and they ask Mike a question, he didn't know about PPAs or he didn't know about grants or he didn't know about, just defer it. It's okay. You don't need to know everything. Don't bullshit an answer. That's the worst
Yeah,
thing you can
that's the
do.
worst thing, right? John, I'm curious as to your take, and I'm going to get a little bit technical here we're kind of getting out of middle school into high school here now, but what's your take on using collateral like case studies and things like that? So for instance, if you've done a casino, I've done a couple dozen of those, or you're at church or whatever, is that something that's typically something you want the setter to do for you? Why or why not?
I think it's extremely valuable. If you had a white paper, a flyer on a post solar, I mean, that just emphasizes the point. You could leave it with them. Just be like, this is a property that was 3 miles down the road. We did it last year. It's performing wonderfully. Call the people, and they won't call, but because you dropped something, you're immediately gain credibility. Like, we've done it
Yeah.
before.
So
Here's who we
let's
did it
pause
with.
there for a second, folks. And I was hoping you'd say that. I don't know you as well yet, but hope to grow as we build this business. But I do that all the time. I don't even golf, and I sold Pebble Beach. So every time I go to our golf course, or I had people on the team, I go, "Hey, use this case study." You know, I go to a Catholic church, but hey, I can use the Christian churches and the other churches I've done before. I said, "Here's a feasibility study," right? Those case studies are so key. And if you're a setter, if you want to work with somebody as valued as John and his team, then talk to them about what their expertise is. We have some really great MVPs, right, Ellie? They're just focused on REAP grants. That's all they want to do. There's some that are focused in the Northeast, Southwest, Southeast, whatever. Know the people you're setting the table for. Yeah, that's great, John. I mean, just that drop off is a good thing, right? Yeah, we've done a couple of these.
And it's gonna if you're the sales org, it's gonna fall back on the EPC you're teamed up with. And if the EPC you're teamed up with can't produce references, you're teamed up with the wrong EPC. So,
Allie, you having fun yet?
Yeah.
That smile. I haven't seen that biggest smile in a while. I love that.
This is great, really great stuff. And John's got a good point too. I mean, that's what we're doing at Surge is we're pre-vetting these EPCs for you. We're making sure we get amazing human beings like John on board who knows what he's doing, can answer these questions, and really knows what he's selling. I had a conversation just this past week, on this local project that we're closing on Monday, and a friend of mine brought the project to the table. And he's installed solar, he's subbed out the work, he's done these projects locally. And he said, this time I don't want to manage all that. I don't want to go out and try to find labor. I just want to put it into your platform, Allie, and I want to get an installer to do it. And Eric Williams, the solar soldier, basically the same day had just brought us an EPC in Illinois, just next door. We got it done. We're getting it moving. They're writing the grant. Everything's in the works within just a matter of days for the 6/30 deadline. So really, that's the beauty of Surge, and it's really fun for me too, as founder and CEO, to actually be directly involved in one of these deals among some friends of mine and see how quickly we can get these projects done and how amazing these people are that we're bringing on board. Quality Solar in Illinois, John with SunRenew in Arizona, Greg out at Luminous Solar, Pam and Jonathan at Symmetry. I mean, we're bringing some really, really amazing EPCs to the table, and we're just going to continue to do so. So, I encourage all of you who are sales pros on the platform, leverage these resources, right? John is a hero in our community. He's going to continue to be. He's on our SurgeCast next month, so make sure that you're there on July 18th. He's our special guest expert, talking about really how to qualify leads and get the right leads so that you're not wasting your time, right? So that you're really going after the best projects that are really impactful for the client and really profitable and efficient for you as well, right? Because we want to make the most of our time. Time is what you can't get back. So anyways, that's my rant of the day. I appreciate all of you being here. Are there any last questions you guys want to ask Mike, Emmett, John, myself?
Allie, let's cut the recording and just open it up for office hours. What do you think?